All right, I think we're live on Facebook now. We're also live in the actual webinar if you've joined us here. And we're super excited. I'm super excited to share this content with you. We've worked really hard on this. A lot of people have worked really hard putting this webinar together. And it's just a pleasure. It's a thrill to be able to, for the first time ever, come to you in a live webinar and really share content that we believe in, that we care a lot about, that we've received great feedback on, and just gift that to you. And so we're going to wait one more minute until about 2 after so that people who are working out their technology have enough time to get on and join us. So we will be starting soon. I see people are jumping on. James Lewis, thanks for being on. Jeremy Belter, good to see you. Joe Schulteis, Maddie Mullins, Pressy Martinez, Sean, so much for being on the webinar. I see Kara and Karina and Justin Miller and David Gonzalez. It's wonderful to see you all on. I won't be monitoring the Facebook Live thread. However, if you do have questions and comments throughout the webinar, please put them on there, and they will be answered by David Gonzalez from our team. And so we'll still be able to interact with you there. Also, if you're listening live on Facebook, I would love it if you clicked like or clicked heart or click wow or whatever you're feeling about the webinar right now. Hopefully not tears or anything on the negative side, but I would love to be able to see later that you were on, that you were listening. That would be cool for me, and it would be encouraging for me just to see your name and know that you joined us. So thanks for being on, everybody. And it's about 2 after. I'm sure people will be joining us as we go, but I love seeing that there are already 14 people on the live webinar, and who knows how many other live on Facebook. This is very cool. Katie Horner says that she's here from Mexico. So we've got at least 2 countries on the call. That's good to see. That's fun. And with no further ado, let's get started. So I am Justin Janowski, and I am with Faith to Influence. I'm the founder and CEO of Faith to Influence. And today we're going to share with you our 15 laws of the uncommon leader. This is content on how to be a powerful leader without compromising your values. And we think you're going to love it. Today's goal for the webinar is to help you gain clarity and confidence rather than confusion and uncertainty on how to show up as a true and powerful Christian leader. It's to help you gain freedom from passivity. Passivity has plagued the men and women of this world since the beginning of time. Adam in the garden was passive with Eve. He was not deceived by the snake, and yet he did nothing. And today there are a lot of men and women who are still struggling with passivity, a lack of ability to decide, a lack of ability to take action, a lack of ability to move forward and to lead. And so we want to give you freedom from that passivity today and move you into assertiveness and leadership. And ultimately, we're looking to help you unlock your greatest potential as a leader for your business, for your family, and for your community. This is a big opportunity. And so here's what we desire for you. This is what I desire specifically for you today in this webinar. If you're investing your time with us, we desire that you leave this webinar with a real understanding and a capacity to implement these 15 laws. I don't want you to walk away feeling motivated and inspired and then doing nothing. And so we're going to teach this in such a way, and we're going to ask questions along the way, and we're going to invite you to take notes and be really thoughtful throughout the process so that not only will you understand and appreciate these laws, you'll also know how you can implement, how you can use them. We want you to be empowered going back into your workplace, empowered going back into your home, empowered going back into your community so that you can really implement and get the results that these are designed to help you get. And so the question for you is, will you commit to be fully present during this? I know that you could be looking at your phone. You could be watching all kinds of different things. There's a lot that you could be doing while you're doing this, or you could choose to be fully present, be fully here. In a world in which we're distracted all the time, you could let distraction go for an hour or an hour and a half and really be with us so that you can take the time to think about how can you implement each of these laws into your life? How can you take real action? And so if you're in for that, if you're committed, you're like, hey, I'm going to be present. I'm going to take away from this. I'm going to take action on this. Go ahead and chat and say, I'm in, or that's me, or heck yeah, or 10-4, or whatever you want to say, to just tell yourself, to make that commitment for yourself. I'm in. I'm into committing to my presence. I'm into committing to the implementation. And what I'm about to share with you, I want to let you know was first shared in a private event only for Faith to influence his trusted tribe members. And so each of those people paid over $10,000 to be able to attend and receive this content that we are about to share with you for free. Their response to this content was so exciting, was so encouraging and empowering to me that we couldn't help but say, how can we get this to more people? We need to share this with the masses. This is one of the examples of the response. And I'll share that when we shared this content, I share content with our community every single week. We have group calls and we share new content. And in our retreats, we share a dozen pieces of content or something like that over the course of a weekend. And people, I think, really appreciate and enjoy the content. However, they have never done what they did when this content finished at that retreat. Is 5 men around the couches in the living room. And when this content was shared, they gave me a round of applause at the end of it, which is actually kind of awkward in a room of 5 people to receive a round of applause in this like kind of intimate setting. It was unusual. And it made me smile. It made me feel really good. And it was just an expression of this being a little bit different. And we also, in our retreats, we give love notes, or if love notes is too feminine for you men, we give man cards. You can call it whatever you'd like. But David Lee, one of our clients, gave me a love note after the content. He said, Justin, 15 laws is beyond exceptional. Thank you for allowing God to use you in delivery of this content. Overwhelmingly the most comprehensive leadership content I've received. Keep inspiring through this content. And he was emotional as he shared this with me, and that meant so much. And this was one of the reasons we wanted to bring it to you. So with no further ado, F2I's 15 Laws of the Uncommon Leader. How to be a powerful leader without compromising your values. And this was designed for Christian men. That's who we work with in our community. That being said, of course, these laws are true for Christian women. Of course, these laws are true for non-Christians. And you'll probably find if you're a non-Christian, you're listening in and you're just curious that at least 11, 12, 13 of these laws, maybe all 15, are still going to resonate with you and be things that you can use, things that are going to help you grow your business, grow your relationships, etc. And so the first law of leadership is that true leaders walk with and surrender to God. They walk with and surrender to God. This means that they have a deep, meaningful friendship with God. And so they're super connected in their relationship with him. He's with them all the time. He's with them as they walk through their daily lives. He's with them. They're praying. They're talking to him. They're developing this deep friendship. And if you're not there, there's an opportunity for you to work towards that. Part of developing this deep friendship with God, though, is to receive his fathering and to recognize that in everything that's happening to us, God is with us. He's there. He's fathering us. He may be teaching us a lesson. He may be working to strengthen us. He may be working to develop our character. In one way or another, though, in the good, the bad, the ugly of our lives, if we can recognize that God is fathering us, we can look for the gift, we can look for the lesson, we can look for the way in which he's calling us closer to him, we can really grow. And another part of this is recognizing that true leaders are obedient to God. They surrender to him. They listen and they ask questions. And as they receive God's will, they're willing to act. They're willing to move, which takes a tremendous amount of courage. You know, when I started this business, I got to tell you, it was about the scariest thing I ever did. My wife had just had our first baby. It was a month after the baby was born, and I had taken that time off for work, and I'd stepped back into my job, and the second day back, I felt like God called me. And he said, start this business. I'd been in personal and professional development for almost 5 years at the time, and God said, it's time for you to uplift and lead Christian leaders. And that was really scary because my wife had just quit her job to be a stay-at-home mom, and we had to provide for 3 instead of 2. And the startup company I was working with had grown to the point that now I was finally receiving an income that could easily provide for my family. That was really exciting. And I remember that first conversation with my wife, and like both of us just being in tears and crying when I'm like, I think I need to quit my job and start this business. It was super scary. And I knew that if I just surrendered to God, if I just stepped up and showed up in obedience and said, yes, God, I will follow your plan for me, I knew that he would provide. And ultimately, we took a month to think about it. We prayed about it. We talked to people who we trusted. We received wisdom and guidance. And then we said, okay, we surrender. We'll be obedient. And we started this business, and God has blessed it in unbelievable ways. In the first 6 months of being in business, we've done more revenue than I expected we'd do in the whole first year. In fact, we reached that point after 3 months. And we hired 2 people 6 months in. We have a team of 5 people right now, which is just remarkable. And there's something that happens when we walk with and we surrender to God and we allow him to work for us. Part of this too is that true leaders admit that they don't always know the answer, and they consult those who do, namely God. It's the sign of a great leader to stop mid-meeting, literally right in the middle of a meeting and heated discussion when they don't know the answer, and say, you know what? I don't think we're going to get there on our own right now. Let's pray. And so I want to invite you to walk with and surrender to God at a higher level. The second law of the uncommon leader is that true leaders lead with love. The greatest commandment is to love God and to love our neighbors as ourselves, which also means we must love ourselves. If we do not love ourselves, it's difficult to love our neighbor as ourselves, or it's at least difficult for that to be a good thing. And so we must lead with love with ourselves. We must lead with love in our connection with God and lead with love around us and the people around us. Again, this is uncommon. These are the uncommon laws. I know that not everyone's doing this. And Jesus walked and led with love over and over and over again. He modeled this for us. In fact, we should even love our enemies. We should love our competitors. In today's world, collaboration is so much more interesting than competition. And I want to invite you to that level of collaboration. I want to invite you to show up with love for your team, for your family, for your competitors. Great leaders treat everyone with respect. It's another form of love. It doesn't matter if it's the janitor or the CEO of the company. Are you showing up with total respect and love? When you lead this way, people will run through walls for you. You will inspire, you will encourage, and people will get results. Now, that isn't to say that we don't need to also have discipline, like when we're leading our kids. Super important to have the other side of this. We need to challenge, we need to push, we need discipline, we need expectations, we need standards for the people around us. But if that's all built on a foundation of love, that's how we're really going to win and help the people around us win too. The third uncommon law of leadership is that true leaders help people remember who they really are. So often people act outside of the character of who they really are. They get lost in a difficult moment or a difficult emotional season, and they forget who they really are. And true leaders don't see them for the difficult moment that they're in. They don't see them for the behavior that isn't going well, that isn't working. They see them for who they can be and who God created them to be. They see them greater than they are currently. If you've ever had anyone see you this way, if you ever had anyone see you for greater than you actually are showing up as, what a gift I'd imagine that was for you. Think for a moment, who are the men and women, the leaders that have shown up in your life and seen you greater than who you were? Or when you were out of character, have called you back to a remembrance of who you really are, of who God created you to be. How grateful are you for those leaders? This is the good stuff. This is how we need to show up for others. Not hold them in the moment. Also recognize that people are on a trajectory, that people are not who they are right now. If we're talking to the 25-year-old, he's one day going to be a 50-year-old, or she's one day going to be a 75-year-old, or the 18-year-old is eventually going to be 28. And how different are we between 18 and 28? So rather than judge really quickly and hold somebody in their worst moments, could we believe in them enough to see who God may be creating them to be over time? And can we even express that to them? Can we empower them in the vision of who we see that they really are? True leaders are also genuinely excited when others achieve. And that's part of helping them remember who they really are. Oftentimes, artificial leaders or amateur leaders are disappointed when they see people achieving around them, or they're jealous and like, this isn't natural. If that's you, that's okay. We have to work through this though. Ultimately, we want to get to a place of being genuinely excited when other people achieve, genuinely celebrating the accomplishments of others. And true leaders have great empathy. Empathy is so critical. If we can feel what people are feeling, then we can get away from judgment. And we can help them remember who they really are. We can help them really grow. If we can empathize, we can relate, we can communicate, and we can build a deep, meaningful relationship, which is such a great foundation for leadership and for influence. Kara, my wife, and I, we've been reading a book, or we read a book called The Brain Rules for Baby. We're new parents. We've got a 9-month-old at home, and we read Brain Rules for Baby together. We like to commonly read books together and then share with one another. We'll either read out loud together and discuss, or we'll read on our own and we'll come together and talk about that chapter and what we learned. Brain Rules for Babies suggested that even a baby, even a child, the most important thing is helping them develop empathy. The thing that's going to dictate how happy they are in their life is how many friends that they have, the community that they can create around them. And the thing that's going to be most important in them creating the community and the friendships and the relationships they want is their ability to empathize. So we need to model that for our children. And it suggested that the key ingredient to a successful relationship between child and parent is empathy. It's so important. The ability for the child to empathize with the parent, the ability for the parent, of course, to empathize with the child. And so this is critical. This is really important. And true leaders forgive. Forgiveness is part of what we must do to help people remember who they really are. If we hold a grudge, if we hold people in their worst moment, we're not going to be able to remember who they really are. We're not going to be able to see past that behavior to the truth. So we must first forgive ourselves and the people around us. The fourth law of the uncommon leader is that true leaders know that curiosity is king and judgment is jester. And another way of saying this, something that we use as a rule of engagement in our retreats, we say, in a way of showing up, we have 8 rules of engagement. One of them is be curious first, critical second. And I learned this from great leaders at my former company, Epic Impact, who taught me that important lesson. Curiosity first, critical second. Yes, there's a place for judgment. Yes, there's a place for criticism. But if we move quickly to judgment and criticism, especially the people in our family, on our teams, the people we ought to lead, that is jester. That is the act of a fool. A fool immediately makes judgments. A fool immediately criticizes. A king or a queen is going to show up in curiosity first. They're going to say, interesting. What do I have to learn about this person? What do I have to learn here? Or they might ask, why do you think that way? That's interesting. Tell me more about that. If we ask a few curious questions first, then we may understand enough to make an appropriate judgment. We also, once people feel received, have the capacity to lead them. People will only receive once they felt received. And so our curiosity is our opportunity to receive them first. And then once they felt understood, they felt received, they felt validated, then they may receive our influence. They may receive our leadership. Prior to that point, it's not likely. They're probably going to filter out what we have to say. They're probably going to get really defensive. So can you show up with curiosity first and then make a judgment, then bring the criticism in a healthy way, of course. Curiosity is king. True leaders show up that way. And through that curiosity, they often find that their initial judgment, their initial thought isn't the most true. They find a deeper, real truth when they show up with curiosity. And like, if you think about what's happening online today with people attacking each other all the time, with people expressing like really intense opinions, and then the other side expressing their really intense opinion, and people going to battle. Ultimately, what I think that they think that they're going to do, if we think about like a political battle online or something of that line, it could even be a sports battle online. I think what they think they're going to do with their next big statement, their next mic drop, is influence people, is get people to agree with them. But ultimately what they do is through the judgment and like the hateful comments, all they ever do is inspire the people who already believe with them and create more anger and divide between them and the people who don't yet agree. And so they're never actually influencing. They're never actually getting the result they want through that kind of communication. The only way to get the result that we want would be to be curious with the other side first. And to like take the people who think something different from you, that's so dramatically different, it's almost offensive to you, and say, interesting, why do you think that way? How long have you thought that way? Where do you think that started? Do your parents think that way, or did you develop that through other sources and experiences in your life? And if we were to ask some questions and really dig in with them and they could feel understood, then maybe we could be like, interesting, thanks for sharing. I have another perspective. Are you open to hearing something that I might see? And at that point, people will probably receive us. So show up curiosity first, criticism second. And the fifth law of the uncommon leader is that true leaders focus on patterns. And this comes from curiosity too. They don't focus on a single behavior. They don't focus on the surface level. They don't assume somebody is a certain way because of the way they saw them act one time. They look for the real patterns, and they lead and influence and help people shift the patterns, the things that truly matter. If you're a sales manager and you're watching and observing your sales team, and maybe it's the first time you're observing your sales team in months, and you're catching one call and you hear somebody say something that doesn't sound quite right, and you immediately criticize that thing, or you immediately go to coaching that thing, oftentimes it's just going to create defensiveness where the salesperson is going to be like, listen, that's not how I normally communicate. That was just a circumstantial thing. You didn't hear what they said on the other side of the phone. And it may be this back and forth defensive thing. And it also may be something that they did just say that one time. And so it's probably not the thing that they need coaching on most. But if you were to listen to 5 calls, you could see patterns. You should probably observe several times before you correct and see what is the pattern of what's really going on here. And you also may want to dig deeper on finding the truth and the root of the problem. And so if you're a sales manager and you're talking to a sales guy or gal on your team and you see that they are struggling right now, they've had a few bad weeks in a row, instead of just like jumping on them of the surface level of them not performing, or making a judgment saying, well, you're clearly not working hard enough. You're not making enough calls, and pushing them right there. What if you were to get a little bit curious first? What if you were to try to seek to find a real pattern? Is the first answer the real answer? Is it the truth? Is it the truth that they're not a hard worker, that their work ethic is lacking, and that's what you need to work on? Or might it be something else? If you ask enough questions and we're really curious and open and say, hey, I noticed the last few weeks you haven't been selling at the level you're used to. What's going on there? Why do you think that's happening? Tell me more about that. How long has that been going on? If we got to the root of the problem through enough questions, we could eventually find out what's actually happening. And oftentimes it isn't the surface level thing. There's something much deeper that's going on. And so we might find that they're really afraid of rejection. And so prospecting is scary for them. And maybe they've been in sales for 5 years with your company, and the entirety of the 5 years, they felt really afraid of getting rejected. They felt really afraid of people saying no. And every time they think about prospecting, they sweat because it's scary to them. If that's true, then we probably need to work on that fear, not just their work ethic. And in fact, probably not their work ethic at all. It's probably true if you have somebody who's been working with you for 5 years who has struggled with a fear of rejection that sometimes overwhelms them, and they're still working with you as a salesperson. It's possible that the reason they're still working with you is because they have exceptional work ethic. The only way they could have possibly made it this far is by having a tremendous amount of resolve and passion and desire and effort and courage. And we could actually, if we found the real problem there, recognize them for that courage, for that resolve, and just see them for who they really are. Like, wow, you've had that fear for the whole 5 years, and yet you've done as well as you have. Yet you're still here. You're still fighting this battle every day. You are a warrior. I'm so grateful to have you on our team. Let's see if we can work through this fear together, so that we can help you grow in your prospecting, so we can help you get more appointments, so we can help you sell more, so we can help you hit your goals. Are you interested in that? I've got some ideas on how we might be able to work through this. Would you like to receive that leadership? Let's get consent. But if we find that deep pattern and we understand them and we recognize them for who they really are, how likely are they to want to receive from us? How likely are they going to be to receive our leadership to solve the real problem, the real pattern? And if we can help them solve that real deep-seated pattern, how much love and loyalty are they going to have for us How much respect? How likely are they to be retained over time? Consider how you've done this in the past or how you've received leadership in the past. Have people focused on the surface level behavior, or have they found the real pattern? It's so important. It's so valuable. And it's also important for us to focus on our own patterns and say, what are my patterns of success right now? What are the things I do over and over and over again, either consciously or unconsciously, that are serving me, that are helping me win, helping me lead at a high level, helping me become the person that God created me to be? What are the patterns that are serving? And what are the patterns that are not? And so we need to take a step back sometimes and evaluate, because a lot of times the patterns that we're running are unconscious. We're not really aware of them. But if we were to take a step back, we could see in a way that we're not normally able to. And we may then be able to see a pattern for ourselves. Or maybe we could take the surface level pattern for ourselves and get more curious to find the root of it for ourselves and focus on, how can I shift these patterns that I've maybe had for a really long time? How can I interrupt these patterns and instill a new, more empowering pattern moving forward? If we focus on patterns, we're going to create real, lasting change. So that's the invitation for you. These are the first 5 laws of the uncommon leader. And at this point, we're going to pause so I can ask you a couple of questions. The first is, which of these 5 laws are you honoring most right now? And the second question is, which of these 5 laws do you need to make the most progress on right now? Which of these 5 laws are you struggling with, or do you need to really focus on and give some attention to? And so if you haven't been taking notes yet, I'm going to invite you to start doing that now. Grab your journal, grab your pen, and record, what are these first 5 laws? And after that, star the one of these first 5 you think you're doing a great job at. Give yourself some recognition. Give yourself a little praise, a little pat in the back. Say, hey, I'm doing pretty well on this one. And I want to continue to build on the foundation I have in this of the 5 laws. And then the second question is, which of these 5 do I need to do better at? Which of these 5 do I need to bring my attention or focus to right now, or experience a real shift in the way I'm showing up? And so they're back up on the screen again. Which of these 5 are for you? So maybe star the one that you're doing great at and circle the one you want to put some attention to, or highlight it if you're using a highlighter. This is the one I need to get better at. So is it for you walking with and surrendering to God? Is it leading with love? Is it helping people remember who they really are? Is it knowing that curiosity is king and judgment is jester, and getting those in the right order? Do you need work on that? Or is it focusing on patterns, your own and others, so that you can solve the real root problems and create lasting change? Which of these 5 are you doing really well with? And which of the 5 need more of your attention? I'm going to give you a few more seconds right now to consider. And this is the part that creates the opportunity for real implementation. So again, be thoughtful here. Focus on your patterns in each of these 5. Are you consistently great or struggling? Awareness is the first key to growing, to changing. We must first be aware. And so this is your invitation for that. So now we're going to move forward into the 6th law. And the 6th law of the uncommon leader is that true leaders are great listeners and great learners. When we're talking about being a great listener, what I want to invite you to is this idea of full presence listening. Most people listen to people with part of their attention. They're also looking at their phone, or they're thinking about what they're going to have for dinner, or they're thinking about the conversation they just finished, or the next one they're about to have. Great listeners are fully present with the person that they're speaking to right now. They give all their attention to them. Developing this level of presence can be a challenge in today's world. Maybe you need to work on meditation. Maybe you need to pray to God for help. Maybe you just need to practice it over and over and over again. Maybe you need to put your phone away, get away from technology, so you can be totally present and really listen to your kids, to your wives, your husbands, your team. One of my former leaders, who in most ways was a pretty great leader, if I walked into his office to talk to him, I'd be like, can I have a minute? And he'd be like, sure. But he'd keep typing on his computer while I'm talking to him and looking at his computer. Man, that hurt. I knew he wasn't really with me. It never felt good. And he did this over and over. It was a pattern. And it was when I was 18. And so I didn't know enough to talk to my leader lovingly and give him some curiosity and feedback so I could help him grow. But how are you showing up as a listener? And full presence listening also means that you're not thinking about what you're going to say next. You're not preparing how you're going to use what you just received to make the sale at the end of the conversation. You're not thinking, men especially, about how you're going to solve your wife's problem when she's sharing with you. Because oftentimes, she doesn't even want you to solve the problem. She just wants to feel received. She just wants to feel heard. She just wants to feel understood and validated. And that solves the problem. And so you might consider just fully receiving, fully listening, without thinking about how you're going to solve the problem. And then when she's finished, asking, and this can go both ways, but it's a common problem with men and women, but asking, is there anything else? And then once she's really finished, asking, is this a problem that you want my help solving? Or do you just want to be received? Women, how many of you just want to be received? You know, I know when I've been able to show up and do this for my wife, which this is not easy for me. I need to work on this one. But when I've been able to show up and do this for my wife, and I've asked her that question, she's like, no, I feel so much better already. Thanks for listening. Thanks for understanding. Changes a lot. And that's what really everybody wants, is to be heard, to be received, to feel important. So can we really listen? And can we also really learn? Great leaders have enough humility to continue to learn, to continue to grow. And they learn from mentors and leaders and people who are further along the journey than them. They learn from people who are their peers. They surround themselves with a good group of men and women in their peer group who can lead them, who can offer them something that they can learn. They also, though, listen to the people that they're leading, and they learn from them. The greatest leaders have enough humility to learn from their clients. They have enough humility to learn from their children. They have enough humility to learn from their spouse. Just because you're in the leadership role of your house or your business doesn't mean that you should stop receiving leadership from everybody else in the house or the business. If you keep learning, so will they. It's a great way for you to model being a learner. And one other piece on this is that great leaders are strong enough in their leadership and they're malleable and flexible enough to recognize that different people need to be led in different ways. One leadership style doesn't fit all. The truth is, you probably have your authentic leadership style. So my leadership style, my way of communicating might not work for you because it may not be authentic. And so you need to lead from an authentic place. Every leader needs to be a little bit different. That's why there's 100 books, 100 million books probably, who knows? There's a lot of them on leadership because there's not one way. It's not obvious. It's not like fixing an engine. There are so many ways to do this. And so you need to find your authentic voice, but then also recognize that different people receive different types of leadership in different ways. And so some of your people that you are leading, whether it's a child or it's somebody on your team or it's one of your clients, some of them need you to push. Some of them need you to bring like passion and challenge to them. And others of them need your support. They need your love. They need to be received. And so a true leader is flexible enough to realize that their way isn't the only way and it isn't the only way for every person. And so they're always curious to listen and learn, how can I lead this individual better? The seventh law of the uncommon leader is that true leaders skillfully strike the important balances. There are some important balances to strike. You know, one that gets talked about a lot is home and life, home and work life. What is your balance between your home life and your work life? And balance does not mean equal in this case. Your time doesn't need to be equally split to balance something. Your focus doesn't need to be equally split to balance something. Your priority doesn't need to be equally split to balance something. However, for each of us, there is a certain balance that is important for us to strike. And if you pay attention, if you gain awareness, you may find what your balance is. And you'll get feedback from home or from work if you're out of balance. And so you need to find what that is for you. And it's also important to know that in the work-life balance, there are certain seasons in which you'll have to come out of balance. There are no doubt certain seasons in which your family's going to need more from you. And there are no doubt certain seasons in which your business is going to need more from you. And you just need to communicate expectations appropriately during those seasons. And then you need to come back to your true balance. You need to pray to God that he helps you come back to your true balance and find that again. It's really important. Other balance is to strike the balance between support and challenge. We just talked about this. For every single person, there's a balance for you to strike as their leader. Some people need a certain percentage of support and a certain percentage of challenge. It may be that you have somebody on your team or in your family who needs 75% challenge and 25% support. And support looks like receiving, love, understanding. Challenge looks like pushing, providing feedback, having the tough conversations. Some people in sports, in business, in life need more push, more challenge, and they respond well to that. And others need the exact opposite. They need 75% support and 25% challenge. And some people are 50-50. It's all over the board. And so strike that balance again and again, support and challenge. Another balance that true leaders strike is the one between confidence and humility. Look at a great leader, and it's highly likely that they are confident and certain in themselves. They have a certain degree of confidence and certainty, which is what makes it easy for you to trust them, for you to believe them, for you to follow them. Their confidence is contagious, and it gives you confidence. They have confidence in themselves. They have confidence in God. They have confidence and trust in the path that they're on. They have confidence in you if they're leading you. It's so important to have confidence and certainty, and it's so important to have humility. Because we've all experienced leaders who have too much ego, too much certainty, that they're not open, that they think they have all of the answers, that they're not humbling themselves before God or before anyone else. They can't receive feedback because they're lacking humility. And so they're stuck in their old ways. And so we must also have humility. That's the only way we can continue to grow and learn and get better and develop as a leader. And honestly, the development, the mastery of leadership, like this is a lifelong game. This should never end. And we need humility to operate that way. Now, what I'll say is, as good as confidence is, as important as confidence is, as important and critical as humility is, either one of these in too great a quantity is ineffective. Too much certainty and ego without the humility creates a poor leader. Too much humility without some certainty and confidence, especially false humility, which feels inauthentic oftentimes, too much of that isn't so interesting for a follower either. And so we need to find and strike that important balance for us, for our authentic leader. What's that balance for you? True leaders, number 8, the 8th law of the uncommon leader is that true leaders are open-minded, decisive, and open-minded. We were doing a final run through on the webinar this morning, and it was brought to my attention, oh, you've got open-minded in there twice. We're looking for typos and things. And I said, yes, I do. Interesting, isn't it? Yes, open-minded is intended to be in there twice. True leaders are open-minded first. They are open to finding the best solution. They're open to receiving feedback. They're open to consultation. They surround themselves with sages, with wise men and women who can provide them counsel. And they receive that counsel. They receive the information on a decision with an open mind. And then they decide. There's no passivity in this. There's decision. There's trust in God, trust in oneself, trust in intuition, trust in the gut, and willingness to decide, willingness to act. It's so necessary in leadership. We must have this decisiveness. And part of developing this decisiveness is in number 1. It's in walking with and surrendering to God. When we develop that deep level of trust with God, we simply trust that He'll give us the truth. He'll give us the answer. And we develop a trust in ourselves by striking that important balance between confidence and humility. Like all of this kind of fits together. But once we've received the information, if we want to lead, we must decide. We must move. And once we've made a decision, a true leader is open-minded enough after the decision's been made to recognize if and when he's made the wrong decision or she has made the wrong decision. And when they recognize I made a mistake, they're not so stuck in their way. They're not so in defense of their ego to stick with the decision that was the wrong one. They're willing to change. They're willing to adjust. They're willing to course correct. So they make a decision with confidence and certainty, and they lead a vision for their team or their family, And if they realize 6 months later or a year later or a month later that it truly was the wrong decision, they will be open-minded enough to change it. If you hire the wrong person, you have to remain open-minded enough to move on from that person. If you get into the wrong relationship and you're decisive about like getting into it, like you take all the information, you're like, yes, this is a relationship I want to be in. Like when we're talking about dating, this is a lot different in marriage. When we're talking about dating, if you get into a relationship with some decisiveness and then you realize it's the wrong one, get out, move away, remain open-minded to finding the true solution. If you make a big decision at work and you're wrong, come to your team, tell the truth, and change direction. People are afraid that if they admit wrongdoing, they'll be less respected, when in reality, your team and the people around you respect you more for your humility, your honesty, your integrity, your willingness to honor the truth above all others. And true leaders have incorruptible integrity. They're not going to let their integrity down to stroke their ego. But some non-negotiables. There are some things in which you as a leader must decide you're not going to be open-minded about. This is your decision. This is who you are. It might be your faith. It might be your family. It's probably your marriage. You know, that's one that we should be decided on. And so there are some non-negotiables for you, and you know what those are. But for the other decisions, let's be open-minded, let's be decisive, and then let's be open-minded again so that we can make the best long-term decisions. Make a plan, decide on it, and throw away the plan if it's wrong, and start over and be decisive again after we gather enough information. This is super valuable. And this leads into the next one, which is that true leaders own their mistakes. They say, my bad. They get the team together and they say, hey, I made a mistake with the direction that we took. And I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make up for that mistake. I want you to know I'm super committed to you. I'm super committed to getting it right. And I'm going to make mistakes. I'm also going to keep doing my best. And so I'd like to ask your permission to move forward with another solution. They come to their kids, they come to their spouse, and they're like, hey, I'm sorry. They own their mistakes. They don't let their ego get in the way of the truth. And people won't respect you less when you humble yourself to own your mistakes. They will respect you more. They will love you more when you've gotten it wrong, because every one of us does. We just pray like, God, help me get this right next time. And true leaders pause regularly. Number 10, true leaders pause regularly. This is very uncommon in today's world. Today's world exists of cell phones and TVs and laptops and constant communication, constant scrolling, constant activity, and very, very little pause for most people. Most people are so busy and hustling all the time that they never stop to pause. Most of you take your cell phone into the bathroom every time you go into the bathroom. I've been guilty of this a lot, so I'm talking to myself here too, but most of you take your cell phone into the bathroom and you scroll. You don't even get a break when you do that. I mean, what would happen if you didn't bring your cell phone into the bathroom? What would you do? Oh man, I guess you might have a thought. You might think about the things that are happening to you. You might take a breath. You might consider things in a new way. You know, most of you probably also go to sleep with your phone. Maybe you're also going to sleep with your husband or wife, but your phone's there too. It's the uncomfortable third party that shouldn't be there. Or fourth party if you both have your phone. And most of us are rolling over in bed and looking at our phone in the dark, wrecking our sleep. And what might happen if when you went into your bedroom, you kept your phone out of it? You got away from the technology to really pause. What might you do? Oh my goodness. Maybe you'd talk with your spouse. Maybe you'd read if you didn't have your phone. Maybe you would pray for longer and deeper. Maybe you'd meditate. Maybe you'd think. These are all really good things. And so true leaders pause regularly. And I've already mentioned some of the ways they do this. They pause to pray. A true leader is willing to pause and stop and pray and ask for counsel from the God of the universe. What a great source we have access to. They pause long enough to meditate and breathe. And I know that some Christians are uncomfortable with the idea of meditation, and they're concerned, is this something else? Is this something not of God? And the truth and reality is Jesus meditated. Jesus took pause with God. Meditation can be prayer. You can be praying and just sitting with your eyes closed and breathing. And if we stop and we breathe and we give oxygen to our cells and our brain, we're going to have a lot more energy. And we're going to slow down our brain from all the hustle and bustle. We're going to slow down long enough, pause, and create enough space for God to come to us, for us to receive God. He's already coming, but sometimes we're in the way. Our own distraction is in the way. True leaders may pause by taking a solo retreat. Maybe for you, that means going out into the mountains on a hike or going skiing, but doing it by yourself and without your phone. Maybe it means going for a walk in the woods. Maybe it's fishing. Maybe it's hunting. There's so many things that you can do, but can you do some of them? Would you be willing to do some of them on your own and without a phone, without distraction, so that you can really have time with God, with yourself? True leaders may pause regularly through immersion or retreats. That's one of the reasons why we have our business model aligned the way it is, so people can get outside their normal environment, get away from all the distraction, all the technology, and retreat and pause and do it with other good people who are like them. They may take tech fasts. So you may consider taking a tech fast. What that means is you put your phone away for an hour. Maybe it's just the hour before bed. Maybe it's 2 hours. Maybe you have tech-free Tuesdays like my wife and I just started. We're on Tuesday nights. We don't watch TV. We don't look at our phones. We're not on the computer. We play games, or we read together, or we talk to each other. You could sit outside in the back and have a fire. There's all kinds of things you can do, but maybe you want to implement a tech-free Tuesday just in the evening. Or, some of our clients have done tech-free Sundays or tech-free weekends where they put the phone away for an entire day. Wow, what a concept. What would you do? Maybe you'd play with your kids. Maybe you'd be totally present to your spouse if you were to put the phone away. Something to consider. And they pause to think. I know some great leaders who literally put a couple hours of thinking time in their electronic calendar every week. And during those hours, they get away somewhere with their journal and no phone, and they just sit and think, and they write. What a concept. Could we turn our brain on in a different way? So I want to invite you to that pause. And now, as we've gone through the second 10 of the 3 10s, the second 5 of the 3 5s, numbers 6 through 10, I want to ask those questions again. On numbers 6 through 10, on these recent laws, which of these 5 are you honoring the most right now? Which of these 5 should you give yourself a pat on the back for? Which of these 5 are you proud of how you're showing up in? And which of the 5 do you need to make the most progress on? Which of the 5 really needs your attention right now? So again, grab your journals and star in these 5, which one am I doing best at? And circle or highlight, which one do I need to bring my attention to? So again, these 5 are that true leaders are great listeners and great learners. They skillfully strike the important balances, again, between home and work, between support and challenge, between confidence and humility. How are you doing on that? They're open-minded, decisive, and open-minded, not with the non-negotiables, not with faith and family and certain things that this is an important non-negotiable for you, but on many things, they show up with that open mind, that decisiveness, that open mind again. True leaders own their mistakes. They say my bad, they apologize, they make it right. And true leaders pause regularly. They get away from technology, they pray, they meditate, they think. They might have a retreat on their own or with others to get away. Which of these 5 are you showing up powerfully in? And which of these 5 needs more of your love, more of your attention, more of your focus? Give you a few more seconds to consider that. You may begin to consider how. For some of you, you're like, oh, that tech fast, I need to do that. Tech-free Tuesdays, write it down if that's for you. For some of you, you're like, oh yeah, that listening thing, I need to stop solving the problems before I hear the problem. Write that down. Think about how on some of these. Maybe there's some people you need to communicate with so that you can own your mistake. Maybe there's some people who need your apology or your forgiveness. Moving on. The 11th law of the uncommon leader. 2/3 of the way there, guys and gals. The 11th law is that true leaders have an awareness of their emotional wake. They have an awareness of their emotional wake. Wake is a term that I think of a boat when I'm thinking of wake. You know, speedboat driving through the lake is going to push water to both sides, and that's what the wake is. It's the wave that's created by the boat. And if a fishing boat is sitting, not moving, somewhere near that wake, once the speedboat goes by and the wave moves, the fishing boat is going to rock. It's going to experience the wake and the change of the speedboat. So that's what I'm talking about when I'm thinking about an emotional wake, is how are your emotions affecting the people around you? When you speed past somebody, what do they feel? Because emotions transfer from one party to another all the time. And you know this to be true. You know when you're around somebody who's negative, somebody who's sad, somebody who's angry, that you feel more of that. If you're in a marriage and your spouse is getting angry, you probably feel your intensity heightening. If you don't, you probably want to be concerned about that too. Because maybe you become indifferent in that relationship. And that's something we need to work on. We need to lead with love. We need to bring full presence and listening to them. However, for most people in your life, they are going to feel your emotional wake and you're going to feel theirs. There's going to be a fact of that. When you're around somebody who's super excited, happy, positive, you probably feel a lifting of your energy too. And so to have awareness of our emotional wake, we must first have awareness of our emotions. And so for some of you, this is really easy. You've been doing this your whole life. You can name your emotion moment to moment. And for others of you, this is really difficult. For others of you, you have never been able to share your emotional experience with someone else. This is more common in men than it is with women. But many men show up with a certain level of stoicism. They're like really stoic, or they're hard, or they want to be tough, or they don't want to like let their guard or the shield down. And oftentimes this is because of how we were fathered as a boy. If our fathers never modeled sharing our emotions, if our fathers were really closed off to their emotions, it's difficult for us to share. Likewise, if your father was absent or abusive, it's probably difficult for you to share your emotions because you probably had to grow up a little too fast. You probably didn't have time to be a boy and be emotional and cry. Or if your father was the type of man who really was against that and said, don't cry, don't be a crybaby, it's probably difficult for you to share your emotions. And so if you struggle with this, I want you to consider what's the pattern and where did this start and why did this start? And recognize that it's not your fault and it's okay. And you can still change this. You can still learn how to share. You can still learn how to express your emotions, because the men in the world who don't show their emotions still experience as much as the rest of us. They're just not expressing it because they didn't learn how, or it didn't feel safe to express it. And so if that's you, what you might consider is literally going to Google and Googling emotions and like reading up on different emotions so that you can intellectually, if it's difficult for you like emotionally to get there, intellectually get to an understanding of like, what are the different names of emotions? Because if you've never said them out loud, you probably have a very narrow list of emotions. And so if you can widen that a little bit, learn about the different emotions that exist, then you can begin to pause. And maybe you put an alarm in your phone. Maybe you put it in your calendar once a day, 3 times a day, something like that, to pause and just like close your eyes and take a breath and like get into your body and say, how do I feel right now? And if you can begin to label that to yourself, then you begin to share that label with other people. And it's actually really helpful to label our emotion. This is helpful with children too. This is another thing from Brain Rules with Baby. Part of the empathy and helping our children empathize is to share with them their emotion. Is to say, oh, I see what's going on here during the temper tantrum. You must be really frustrated. Sorry you're experiencing that. You know, it looks like, oh, you're disappointed that like they have a toy that you want. I totally get it. We call that emotion jealousy. It's a difficult emotion. It doesn't feel so good, does it? And like we can help diffuse our children when we label their emotion, and we can help them get into empathy and understanding of emotion. And that's okay when we give a label to it. And as adults, if we don't know how to do this, we need to start now. So once you get an awareness of your own emotion, then the thing I'd invite you to is to like be aware and focus on and be attentive to how does our emotion affect the people around us? What is our emotional wake? When we show up in a certain emotional state, how do people respond? When we show up in a completely different state, how do people respond? Begin to get outside of ourselves once we've gotten into ourselves to like look enough and empathize with the people around us and see how we're affecting other people. And then once we have both of those awarenesses, we can be intentional about our emotional wake. A true leader is gifted at bringing the right emotion at the right time. They actually know when their team or their family needs calm and peaceful energy, especially in chaos, in a storm. They know when to bring that calm, peaceful, we've got this kind of energy. And they also know when to bring fire and passion and like really get into it with their team or their family. Consider your emotional wake. What is your emotion? How is it affecting the people around you? And what emotion does your team need for this meeting? What emotion does your family need for this evening? If you're coming home from a long day of work and you haven't been thoughtful and intentional about your emotional wake, you may walk in the door and hurt your family. Not physically, but hurt them when you consider what they could experience from you instead. When dad walks in the door at the end of a day of work and he's excited and he's happy, and he's hugging his kids, and he's playful, and he's kissing his wife, and he's in a great mood, he brings that energy into the home, it changes everything. When dad comes home from a long day of work and he's downtrodden, he's exhausted, he doesn't want to play with the kids, he just wants to sit on the couch, he wants to crack a beer, he doesn't want to talk to anybody, he feels like he's got so much in his own head that he can't be present to his wife's story of her day, that's going to affect the family. And oftentimes we just let whatever happened to us in the day determine how we're going to show up back at home, or how we're going to show up in the next sales conversation or the next meeting. We let the last one affect the way that we show up instead of being intentional and deciding. And ultimately, if we decide and we know how we want to show up, we can probably develop the strategy to show up in the way that's going to serve. And so you may say, okay, what my family needs from me is for me to be happy, for me to be strong, and for me to be loving. Cool. If your family needs you to feel happy, strong, and loving to be at your best, then what do you need to do to feel that way before you walk in the door? Can you do it in the car, in the driveway? Maybe you just need to pray. Maybe you need to pause and take 10 breaths and just close your eyes and let go of the day. Maybe you need to release. You know, there's a meditation called a release meditation where you just close your eyes and breathe and just say release, 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 release. And if you do this, you might try it right now, as goofy as it could sound to some of you. If you do this for even a minute, just whisper release to yourself with your eyes closed, breathing, you'll probably find that your body starts to release the tension. So does your mind, so does your emotion. It could be that you just need to do that right before you walk in. Maybe you need to do some jumping jacks or some push-ups or something. Maybe you need to close your eyes and visualize a great evening with your family. Maybe you need to close your eyes and visualize the smiles of your kids running to you and your wife like giving you a kiss. Or vice versa, ladies. And maybe that visualization will help you show up the right way. Same thing with the next meeting at work. Same thing with the next sales call. What's your pre-call ritual if you're a salesperson? Be thoughtful about that, because you need to get in the right emotional state to have the emotional wake that's going to serve the people that you're leading. True leaders are very thoughtful about this, and they're aware of this, and they use this to make a bigger impact. The 12th law of the uncommon leader is that true leaders value exceptional community. They value this in their team and the people that they surround themselves with. So entrepreneurs, business people, you need team, and you need the right team. Exceptional community doesn't mean that everyone's the same as you, especially for those of you who have a lot of energy and you categorize yourself as like a people person and you're fun and like you like to engage and you're external. Oftentimes these kinds of people, when they're running a business, they hire people just like them, which is cool because they have the same strengths and you can connect at a deep level and you have fun together. But it's also a problem because you have the same weaknesses in most cases. Oftentimes people who get a lot of energy from people and give a lot of energy to people and really enjoy that communication, that back and forth, they struggle with the analytical side. This is where I am. The structures, the systems, the technology. I did not put this webinar together. This would exhaust me. This would drain me. I deliver the webinar. And then I find the right people who can handle the analytics, who can find the technology, who can work on the rest of it. And they're very different from myself. David Gonzalez on our team, Justin Miller is supporting us with this webinar process. These men are totally different in the way their brains work. And I value their exceptionality, the way that they show up. And exceptionality may or may not be a word. If it's not, I invented it now. If it is, good. I'm talking unnecessarily. but they value exceptional community and they recognize that means different from them. They look at their deficiencies and they try to find people who have those strengths and they surround themselves with that. David on our team is incredibly creative. He's incredibly analytical. He has a mind for evaluation in a way that I don't. He has a mind for creating our videos and our photos and our website and our logo. We have a cool logo. We wouldn't have if I was in charge of it. In fact, I tried to take on the project before David stepped in, and it was a mess. It wouldn't have been attractive. And we have a beautiful logo. We have a beautiful website. We have great slides because I've empowered someone around me who's totally different from me to support the team. So be thoughtful about that. Who's on your team? Is it exceptional? Not only do you value it, but you have to build it. You have to value exceptional community and then find it, build it, be intentional about it. Also, you may consider, who are you receiving leadership from? Who are you being mentored by? True leaders value exceptional leadership and mentors, and they seek them out. They seek out wise old sages. They seek out other kings or queens who can really serve them in what they're doing. People who are doing it better than they are or who've gone first. They value exceptional community within their peer group, and they surround themselves with people who are going to help them grow. They value exceptional community with their friends. They value people who are going to bring playfulness and joy and fun and all these different things, and who are like going to create win-win relationships. Not the friends who are going to drain your energy and win because they're friends with you, but the friends who are going to also give something. It doesn't mean that we don't serve and that we don't provide for people who are different from us, but we want to be thoughtful about creating win-wins in our relationships. Most relationships are lose-lose, or they're win-lose or lose-win. I'm going to explain this a little bit. You've probably at some point in your life experienced a friendship or a romantic relationship or a business relationship with a client or an employer or an employee where both sides were losing by being in this relationship. And if both sides are losing, this isn't very interesting. So consider for a moment your network, your community, your relationships. Is there anyone you're in relationship with in which you're both losing by being in this relationship? If so, how can you elevate the relational energetic, as we call it? Or should you pour less energy into that relationship? Should you move away from that? The next relationship is I win, you lose. And oftentimes we create these relationships. We create them in business a lot. There's a lot of businesses or salespeople who are creating I win, you loses with their clients or their prospects. They're not telling a full truth about the product. They're selling the prospect something that's not right for them. They're selling at an unfair price. They're twisting arms or manipulating to get a sale, to get a deal done. And there's not a lot of integrity in it. And they're creating an I win, you lose. It also happens the other way, by the way, though. There are plenty of clients out there or customers who want to take advantage of the business, who want to take advantage of the salesperson or the service provider and treat them unfairly and make sure that they win at all costs. And they don't care whether or not the salesperson loses or the service provider loses. That's not so interesting either. The other thing, though, is that this happens in romantic relationships. Some of you have been in romantic relationships where you've been committed to making sure you win at the expense of the other person. Some of you are in a marriage like this, where you're a husband who's making sure you win and you get what you need from your wife, what you want from your wife all the time, but you are not concerned about her winning. If that's you, I know this is hard to hear right now, and this is your moment of opportunity to gain awareness and to decide that you're not going to show up that way anymore. You're not going to value you winning more than you value her winning. Same thing with wives. This goes both ways. If you're in dating relationships, this is very commonplace in today's world, is to create I win, you loses. This looks like a man going on a date with a woman, realizing he doesn't really like her, she really likes him, and developing a sexual relationship with her. Even though he knows it's going to hurt, even though he knows he's not interested in something beyond that. Men, if you're doing this, women, if you're doing this, make a decision to stop now. Make a decision to be different. It doesn't serve them. It doesn't serve you. Ultimately, that I win, you lose is a lose-lose. You might not realize it yet, but it is, and you will realize it. So make the change now. You're forgiven, but change now. The next level relationship is I lose, you win. And this is like the sacrificial relationship where someone's super committed to making sure everyone around them wins, but they don't really concern themselves with whether or not they win. Moms are famous for this, for sacrificing themselves, for being the martyr, for making sure that their husband wins, that their kids are winning, for taking care of everybody, taking care of the house, like taking care of their community and their friends and being that support system, and not yet taking care of themselves, not getting the self-care in that's so necessary, not making sure that they're okay, that they're winning. And ultimately, while this is service-oriented, I get it, I lose, you win ends up being we lose. Because over time, there's only so much we can give if we're not filling our own tank. And if you're not taking care of yourself, you'll have less and less and less to give over the years. And it will end up being we lose in comparison to the way in which both sides could win if you took care of yourself too. If you honored what you needed in the relationship too. It's really important. This happens in business as well. A lot of entrepreneurs or salespeople in insurance or realtors, as an example, a lot of these people will have their phone on 100% of the time. They'll be available for a client anytime they call. That's creating a I lose, you win. It's not good for you. It's not good for your family. It's not healthy. It's preventing you from striking the important balance. It's preventing you from being a great listener and totally present to your family. It's making you lose in multiple different ways if you tell yourself and your clients that you're available all the time. There's a better we win than that. It's actually more respectable than that. So what we want in relationship is win-win or no deal. In 95% of our relationships, win-win or no deal. Can we show up that way in our exceptional community where we make sure both sides are winning in this relationship or we walk away? Win-win or no deal. Call the relationship to that standard. If you're in a romantic relationship and you're dating, if it's not a win for both sides, see if you can get it there. And after a period of time, if you can't, it's probably appropriate to walk away. Even in an engagement, that's the appropriate thing to do. That's not the option for marriage. We'll get to that in just a second. But in other dating relationships, it certainly is. In business, it certainly is. If you're working somewhere and it's either not a win for them because you're not giving your best or you're not aligned with that company or you're not really passionate about it and you're just taking a paycheck, move away. If you're working for someone and it's not a win for you and you can't get it to win-win, move away. Let go, move on. I know this is hard and it's a must if we want to really grow as a leader. If we want to become who God created us to be, we need to create these win-win relationships. And the level above win-win or no deal is we win commitment for life. And this is for select few relationships, but certainly marriage is the obvious one. When we marry someone, we want to commit on both sides to a we win for life, all in. And like, even if we have a season where we fall out of that and we lose, or I win, you lose, or I lose, you win, like, we're always both committed to finding our way back to a win-win commitment. If you've never talked to your spouse about this, talk about it. Talk about these relational energetics and tell them how committed you are to making sure both sides are winning and that you're going to do your part. And oftentimes, if even just one side is committed to that, in most relationships, it will come back to win-win. If just one side is 100% unequivocally committed to we win, no matter what, it's probably going to return to that place. You do need consent from the other side, but usually you'll get it if you just start showing up that way. So own your side of it and start to show up in that way. So value exceptional community. True leaders value it in their team, their mentors, their peers, their friends, their key relationships, and they create win-wins in these relationships. The 13th law of the uncommon leader is that true leaders lead their own family first. That starts with you, by the way. You must first lead yourself so that you can lead others. You must first do the work. Leadership is oftentimes something that's done best when we're leading by example. And if we're not taking care of ourselves and our energy and our emotional experience, our connection with God, if we're not praying for the people around us and for ourselves, like, if we're not praying, we're not doing these things, we're not leading ourselves first, we're going to have a hard time leading other people. Once we've led ourselves, though, we must lead our families. There's a popular notion right now in personal and professional development that your purpose in life is more important than your family in life. This common idea that, like, purpose is first because it impacts so many more people than your family, and the family should take a back seat to your purpose. I've read this in books. I've heard people say this. And it's just not true. It's not true for Christians in the way that they want to show up for their family at the very least. It's not what God intended. God intended for us to lead our family first. Your way of showing up inside of your family should be incredible and exceptional expression of God's love. The way that you show up for your spouse, people should see this and see God's love. Not all the time. We all make mistakes. We all fall short, no doubt. But that's your aim again and again and again. And if you do that, if you commit to that, people will see the difference. And they'll be curious about that. Why is this person's marriage like theirs is? It's because you're inviting God into it, because you're valuing your family first, you're leading your family first. It's important to lead our children first, to really value those relationships. You know what the world really needs? The world really needs parenting. It needs exceptional fathering. You know, we work with men specifically, so I'm going to speak from that viewpoint. Mothers, you are the most incredible gift, and absolutely your family needs you, and you're there more often than fathers are. There are so many fathers, though, who are absent, neglectful, who are not following through, and are not showing up and leading their family first. They're valuing their purpose over their family, and they're missing the mark. And so I'm going to speak directly to the men that, like, God has called you to lead your family. God has called you to be the spiritual leader of your family. And it's time for you to show up. It's time for you to take this responsibility on. This is your most important legacy. And what I think the world needs is greater, more pure, Christ-like fathering. Above all else, if everyone just fathered and led their own family in this world, it would all change tomorrow. There's nothing we could do in individual families more than having true fathering to completely change the dynamic of the world and the way people are showing up. A lot of the problems would go away. A lot of solutions would present themselves. The world would be a better place if we just showed up and led our family. Men, I'm calling you to this now. If you're willing, accept that invitation. If you're watching this live right now, feel free to jump in the chat and say, I'm in. I accept the responsibility. I accept the challenge to lead my family first. This is our most important legacy. And from that foundation of our own home, let's go out and lead our communities, our teams, our companies, and our world. Let's start inside of our own four walls first, though. True leaders are also servants. True leaders are servants. They're more concerned about how much they give than how much they get. Yes, they're looking for the win-win relationship, and they're going to lead with service. They're going to lead with love, like we talked about before. Jesus Christ, the God of the universe, washed the feet of peasants. He washed the feet of sinners. He went to dine with the people who everyone else in town thought were the worst. And he showed up in humility to serve, and he washed their feet. Jesus Christ, the God of the universe. If he can wash the feet of others, how are we serving? How are we showing up and humbling ourselves for that? You know, I'll tell you a story. When I was probably 19 or 20, I was new in sales and new in the leadership world. I was at a conference, and I worked for a company that had tens of thousands of people working for it. And I'm at a conference, and we're all sitting at our tables, and there's like an open seat or two at each table, and kind of the executives and the top leaders of the company were coming in at the last minute and filling those final seats. And someone sat at our table who, it was the kind of person who, when they sit at your table, you feel like you're with a celebrity. You feel a little nervous, you feel excited, you're kind of thinking, should I ask a question? What question should I ask? You're a little bit in awe of this person. This is a great leader who's sitting at our table. This is a great person who's in our presence. That's what I felt as like a 19, 20-year-old at this table. And what stood out to me is that this person got up from the table, and the first thing he did was ask, can I get anyone anything? Can I get you a water? Can I get you a drink? Is there anything I can do to serve you? Man, that made an impression on me. I've never forgotten that. Leaders, as we grow as leaders, as our businesses grow, as we make more and more money, as we impact more and more people, are we losing that? Or are we growing that? Because that's when your leadership, your service, your way of showing up for and giving to people means even more. That's when it influences what they do. So great leaders are servants. You know, it's been said, I met the manager and I got the impression that he was important. And then I met the leader and I got the impression that I was important. So when people meet you, when they commune with you, when they sit with you for dinner, when you're with them, teaching, sharing with them, do they get the impression that you are important? Is that the way you're showing up as a leader? Or Do they recognize how important they are when they're in your presence? If you're not yet showing up and presenting the latter, now's the time. Let's make that change. It can happen in an instant. And then the final law of leadership, the law of the uncommon leader, is that true leaders are radical. The truth is, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening to this webinar, you've recognized probably already that there's a reason we call these the laws of the uncommon leader. These first 14 are highly uncommon. There might be leaders out there who are doing 1 or 2 or 3 or 5 of these well, but doing all 14 of these is highly uncommon. And radical, you might say. It's totally different from the cultural norm. It's totally different from what everyone's saying we should do and how they're saying we should show up. It's totally different than what we've seen modeled in most cases again and again and again throughout our lives. If you simply follow these 14 laws of leadership, you will be radical. You will probably be polarizing to a certain degree. People will see you and think, man, that is a radical leader. That man or that woman is different. There's something about them. They're not the same. Jesus Christ was incredibly radical. He was different. He was polarizing. We're invited to show up the same way. People should meet you and know immediately that something's different, even if they don't know what. How are you doing in this? Is this true for you right now? Are you showing up radically in your faith? Are you showing up radically in your love? Are you showing up radically in your generosity, in the way that you give and impact people? We're called to be radical. And if you're not sure how you're doing on this, ask your family or ask your team or ask the people who are most important to you to pull you. Give them this list of 15 and say, hey, can you give me a rating 1 to 10 on each of these? Or A, B, C, how I'm doing? Might be tough to receive that feedback, but if you can't give yourself the feedback honestly, if you're too easy on yourself, you're too hard on yourself, ask someone else to do it for you. People should describe you as being radical, as being different. They should know the difference when they meet you. And ideally, of course, it should be a very positive difference. They should be like, wow, like I just don't feel like this in front of other people. What's so different about you? And cool, here's our opportunity to disciple. Here's our opportunity to give glory to God. So these are the 15 laws of the uncommon leader. Now, for these last 5, I want to ask those same questions again. Which of these 5 laws are you honoring most right now? And which of these last 5, numbers 11 through 15, do you need to make the most progress on? Do you need to bring your attention and your focus to? So again, the final 5 here are that true leaders have an awareness of their emotional wake. They value and build exceptional community. They lead themselves and their family first. They are servants, and they are radical. So star the one of these 5 that you think you're doing the best at. The one you're really honoring right now. Give yourself that recognition. And circle the one you need to pay most attention to. Where do you need to grow right now? I'll give you a few more seconds on this. Now, I have a few additional questions. The first thing I'm going to make is a statement, which is that at this point, you've circled and you've starred 3 of these laws. You've hopefully starred 3 that you're doing really well at. You can recognize yourself and continue to build on that foundation of where you're doing well. And you've hopefully circled 3 that you know and recognize and have an awareness of that you need to bring more attention to. And so those might be your top 3 in each category. But it's also true that these 15 are not in any hierarchical order. They're just in the order I feel like God came through me in when I was writing these laws. And by the way, like God delivered this content through me. It's incredible. I've probably been preparing this content for 13 years in some way, but I sat down to write this content because I knew we needed some real leadership content, and it all went down in an hour. And I'm not capable of that, not even close. So it was a remarkable feat. I don't see myself as a creative. I don't see myself as a content creator. And yet here it was, these 15 laws in 1 hour. But it's because God was working through me and I invited him into that. I prayed for that. And so they came out in this order. It's not a hierarchy. You should probably consider, is there a hierarchy for you? And maybe reorder them that way. All that being said, The 3 that you have circled you need to put your attention on might be the 3, but they might not. It may be that the 3 you really need to pour into are all in the same category of 5. They're not mixed between even, neat categories of 5. Like it may be the first 3 that you need the most work on, or maybe the last 3. And so I'm going to give you a few more seconds or minutes here to just consider the whole 15 and journal in your notebook or your journal anything you want to write down about these. These are the ones I want to focus on. Maybe you recognize there's 1 or 2 or 3 you just really need to dive in on. Maybe you want to reorder these in your own prioritization. That's okay too. Spend this time doing whatever you want. Or maybe you want to put something in your calendar for tomorrow. You want to schedule an hour and say, work on helping people remember who they really are. And maybe you want to review this content. Maybe you want to review your notes. Maybe you want to start to think about this. Maybe you want to make a list of people who you want to help remember who they really are and start having those conversations and practicing. But take this next few seconds to just consider the whole list and what do you really want to take away from this? What do you really want to anchor? What do you really want to implement moving forward from this? Do that now. So again, the 15 laws are to walk with and surrender to God, to lead with love, to help people remember who they really are, to know that curiosity is king and judgment is jester in that order. It's appropriate to judge and criticize, but after we've been curious first. To focus on patterns, that true leaders are great listeners and great learners. They skillfully strike the important balances between home life and work life, confidence and humility, support and challenge. They also are open-minded, decisive, and then again, open-minded. They own their mistakes. They pause regularly to pray, to meditate, to breathe, think. They have an awareness of their emotional wake. They value and build exceptional community. They lead their family and themselves first. They are servants, and they are radical. This makes you a kingdom entrepreneur, by the way, if you're an entrepreneur. This makes you a kingdom man or woman in the workplace. This allows you to do God's work. And it doesn't matter if you're a janitor, a teacher, a police officer, a salesperson, a CEO, an entrepreneur. All of you can bring this. All of you can do kingdom work in your role. So consider these 15 and where do you need to grow? What do you need to do next?